What is up, guys? The doctor is back in the office, and today we're going to be breaking down and recapping what we saw at UFC Fight Night, Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. Overall, a really fun card. So many finishes, so many early finishes. Arman Tsarukyan masterclass in the main event. Bilal versus Ian Garry really delivered in terms of I thought it maybe would have been a more like Ian Garry point fighting most of the time, but it was a good fun scrap. Waldo Cortes-Acosta masterclass. Oralbai sending Jack Hermansson to retirement, and a couple of other really fun bangers all over this card. But let's get into it, starting off with our main event of Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. And don't forget, if you like these kind of videos, to like, comment, subscribe. All the support helps. We're blowing up on Instagram and TikTok. We're doing pretty well over there. Let's keep blowing up the YouTube. So starting off, we have Arman Tsarukyan versus Dan Hooker. Dan Hooker was absolutely outclassed in this fight. From the get-go, you could see Arman Tsarukyan was piecing this dude up on the feet, just wicked strikes. I mean, he had him rattled fucking early. And when I was doing my notes for this, I was like, how funny would it be if Dan Hooker won this fight? And for the sake of the UFC, we needed Arman to win. And there was like an early moment in the beginning where Dan catches a kick. They're kicking from range in the beginning. And then Arman Tsarukyan kind of goes into this dominant grappling style where he throws a nice leg kick, goes into a double. Dan Hooker did a nice job staying up. And then this is where the fight changed. Arman Tsarukyan hit this nasty knee in the clinch on Dan Hooker, and that continued to just let on an onslaught of shots that'd be shot onto Dan Hooker's head for the rest of this fight. He started boxing his head off. Then there was a point where Dan Hooker gets Arman in kind of like a guillotine, and Arman does a beautiful job scrambling to get on top position and get out, gets on side control. And one of the keys of this fight was you knew Arman Tsarukyan's ground and pound is absolutely deadly, and he starts just dropping elbows on Dan Hooker's head. Dan Hooker looked like a mutant by the end of the fucking first round. Ton of control time for him. Dan was also kind of landing some cheeky little elbows in there, but just dominant showing with the elbows from Arman Tsarukyan. Also, there was a clash of heads somewhere in there that kind of led to Dan Hooker's face swelling more up, but who cares? And then moving on to the second round, Arman kind of gets him in a single leg. There's another one of those guillotine sequences where Arman Tsarukyan masterfully scrambles up to get on top. His landing ground and pound, I would have won $1,000 if he fucking finished there. And then he gets him in an arm triangle and subs him. I mean, he absolutely took Dan Hooker's manhood. It was absolutely disgusting what he fucking did. This guy outclassed him on the feet. It was the sharpest Arman had ever looked. You know, you're off for whatever, a year, 2 years, however long it's been. And you knew you needed a statement performance. He came out here and absolutely dominated Dan Hooker, who I wouldn't necessarily consider him a true contender in this division, but he is a big name. He still was the number 6 ranked guy going into this fight, and Arman Tsarukyan made easy work of him. There was never a moment where you thought Arman was going to lose this fight. Dan Hooker really did nothing whatsoever. He's a tough dude. Like, credit to him for eating all the elbows to the face that he did. But just Arman Tsarukyan is an absolute beast. They have to make the Ilya match. I mean, there's nothing else. If we have to live in a world where we see Paddy Pimblett or fucking Justin Gaethje get a title shot against Ilya over Arman Tsarukyan, and I get it, Arman dropped out. He ruined a lot of fucking things, you know, over a year ago against Islam. But those two dudes are so undeserving. Arman Tsarukyan has the reputation. He has the names on his fucking win list. I know it sounds stupid, but he's the guy. He poses the most interesting threat in terms of he can grapple really effectively. Look at his striking in this fight. You know, I've always said he's kind of had underrated boxing. We know he has elite ground and pound when he gets you to the ground. So I think him and Ilya would be an absolute banger of a matchup, and it's the only one to make. I don't want to see Ilya fucking running away from this guy. Not that that was happening initially, but this is the matchup that has to be made. Please, Dana White, make this matchup, because there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing else better than it. And Dan Hooker, you know, you tried. I really like you. You're a warrior, but you bit off more than you could chew. I know you got headbutted. Maybe that impacted your performance because you fall like an idiot in this. But Arman Tsarukyan, absolutely dominant. Dan Hooker also was, again, I pointed out in the breakdown for this, he was trying to work those kicks in, and he just gets blitzed way too often in those kicks. Arman Tsarukyan took advantage, was able to get him down, and just did so much damage on the ground. I mean, was threatening submissions, like was trying to threaten a crucifix. Just domination from the guy Arman Tsarukyan. He's going to be fighting Ilya sometime at the end of January, is what everybody wants. Moving down the card, we go to the co-main event of Bilal Bilal, remember the name Muhammad versus Ian Garry. Bro, Ian Garry only beat me because he won. Bro. And eye poke. Ian Garry realistically needed to throw 2 eye pokes and spam oblique kicks to beat our GOAT Bilal. That's really what it comes down to. But overall, this was a super fun fight. I mean, I was surprised with how scrappy he was. You knew Bilal Muhammad was going to try and strike with Ian Garry because he literally said that he was. And these two dudes were both really going at it early in the first round. There was a good eye poke on Bilal Muhammad. The medic comes in and he's just wiping away a cut. Ian Garry cut Bilal Muhammad pretty early, and you have the fucking medic wiping the cut when he's supposed to be wiping the eye of fucking Bilal Muhammad. So that was ridiculous. Bilal Muhammad was landing nice right, but the problem in this fight was Bilal Muhammad couldn't cut angles good enough to land kind of that key shot on Ian Garry that truly stunned him. He had a couple of nice ones in there, but his boxing is good as much as I like to say, man, he can hit hard. He doesn't cut angles good enough to knock out and really finish guys at a consistent level or at any level at all. And he didn't land one takedown in this fight, right? 0 for 7. It felt like 0 for 100. Man, how many times would he shoot a double leg? Ian Garry would get his back to the fence. It would stall on the fence, and then Ian Garry would reverse position and slip away. That was pretty much the majority of this fight. Both these two dudes were trading on the feet. Ian Garry is probably getting more meaningful shots based on how their faces looked at the end. The oblique kicks and teeps to the body that Ian Garry was ripping up Bilal Muhammad's legs and front of the body were absolutely lethal. I mean, the oblique kicks were really the difference of this. He was beating up whatever was Bilal Muhammad's front leg, whether he was an orthodox or southpaw. And listen, I thought Ian Garry was going to defend the takedowns well in this, but for Bilal not to get one takedown for the amount he shot is incredibly impressive. And credit to Ian Garry. I said he had good takedown defense. Maybe it's fucking great at this point. And in the second round, he had a second eye poke where he went in like this. He punched with 2 hands. And he didn't really eye poke him, but the idea that you punch in like this is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. I've never really seen that very often. And Ian Garry also did a nice job in this when Bilal would shoot a double leg or, a single leg and Ian Garry would get to the fence. Garry would do a nice job kind of in the clinch, getting a little scrappy, throwing elbows at Bilal Muhammad just to bloody him up and slow him down. Listen, Bilal Muhammad had moments where he was trading pretty well with Ian Garry, but at the end of the day, Ian Garry was so much slicker on the feet in terms of his footwork is a lot cleaner. I know the strikes are very similar. And I give credit to Bilal Muhammad because a lot of people are going to, shit on this guy for his fighting style. But credit to him, his last 2 fights, he's fucking willing to stand in there and bang in the pocket. When the takedowns don't work, he still can be effective as a striker. I know he doesn't have knockout power whatsoever, or really even knockdown power. But he can do damage to you, and he can catch him. And Ian Garry got caught a couple of times, and you could tell he was like, shit, Bilal Muhammad has decent boxing. I know the Canelo hands, we like to clown this guy a lot, but he does have decent enough boxing and decent enough fundamentals. Even if it's not the most clean, I think Ian Garry described it. He was like, the awkwardness of Bilal's striking kind of makes it difficult to deal with. And it's true. He just throws, he switched stances a lot. He moves in such a weird way, and how he commits to his shots is just so fucking odd. After this fight ends, credit to Ian Garry, wins 30-27 on 2 judges' scorecards, and then 29-28, which I thought was fair. He calls out, Islam, saying, he's the best welter, whatever fucking bullshit he wants to talk about. I think that is the fight to make, though. Originally when I matchmaked after UFC 322, I was saying, right now I would just do Michael Morales versus Islam. We have to wait till the Ian Garry versus Bilal fight, and I was assuming Ian Garry won. Ian Garry versus Islam, make it sometime next year. An interesting matchup, but I think Ian Garry really is going to struggle as Islam is another level up of a grappler than Bilal Muhammad, and he's a better striker. He has a little bit more variety in his strikes. He's really dangerous in the clinch. He's better on the feet. Listen, do I think Ian Garry has some things that he can do particularly well against Islam? Yeah, his takedown defense is very good. He can get submissions off of the back. He does a nice job getting to the cage to stuff takedowns and can do work in the clinch and, has impeccable footwork. But I don't think it's going to matter against an Islam Makhachev. But either way, I think it's a fun fight. And then I just saw, before I started recording this video, Ian Garry in the back of the backstage, and he runs into Hamza Chimaev, who is in the corner of Arman Tsarukyan. And fucking they get into an argument where Hamza Chimaev's pushing him around. And listen, for me to say that Ian Garry is in the right in anything, That's saying a lot because I don't like this dude whatsoever. I think he's very fake. Not saying his fighting style. I think he is a very talented fighter, but I think he's fake. I find him annoying. But Hamza Chimaev was being a bitch there. I mean, Ian Garry low-key mogged him backstage by just kind of being like, fucking grow up and stop being a child. I like that from Ian Garry. But either way, really impressive win. Gets a win over a former champion. And I don't really know what's next for Bilal. 2-fight losing streak for him now. I think he could still beat guys who have significantly worse takedown defense than Ian Garry. And he could touch up people on the feet. We've seen it. We've seen the Canelo hands his last 2 fights. If this was a 5-rounder, who fucking knows? Maybe Bilal Muhammad gets his first true knockout where he knocks Ian Garry out cold. Who the fuck knows? But either way, Ian Garry, you're going to be getting Islam. Impressive win for the boy. Moving down the card, we go to Volkan Oezdemir versus Alonzo Menifield. Listen, I've never thought highly of Alonzo Menifield whatsoever, and Volkan Oezdemir, he proved that in this. He immediately puts pressure on him. He's getting his right hook through on Menifield or left hook, whatever it was. There was a big knee from Volkan Oezdemir, and then he threw a sick combo, 1-2, I think, with that knee, and fucking KO'd him. And he's just a lethal striker, man. He's been in the business for so long. This is a dude who fought DC for the belt. And there was a quote somewhere along the lines from Michael Bisping where he was like, "Who does that to Alonzo Menifield?" And I was like, fucking everybody. I do not think highly of your performance. That was me after his fight with Omar Sy. Like, Alonzo Menifield, I've never thought is particularly great. He's a smaller, kind of counter-punching light heavyweight who is not really elite or particularly that great at everything, but it was a left uppercut, then a left knee, and then he blitzed him with punches. Beautiful. And then at the end of this, you see a Shavkat Rakhmonov sighting in the crowd, so that was kind of cool. Good win for Volkan Oezdemir. Alonzo Menifield, just you're nothing special. But Volkan Oezdemir also saying, hey, the journey and the goal is the title. So maybe we get a Volkan Oezdemir 2026 title run. How does that sound? Either way, sick knockout for Volkan Oezdemir. I think I had him by 2nd round knockout, but got it done in 1. Moving down the card, we go through Jack Hermansson versus Miktabek Oralbai. This was like one of those where all the gamblers were starting to overthink because they saw how crazy the odds, the plus money was for Jack Hermansson. He has had a good UFC career, but sometimes you got to boil it down to this. This guy got brutally flatlined KO'd by RoboCop, and then after getting flatlined KO, Herb Dean watched RoboCop pummel this dude in the head multiple other times. And Oralbai is a very dangerous UFC fighter. And Jack Hermansson, he's old. He's coming down a weight class. Oralbai's fought at like the 165. I think he's fought at 170 before. It just makes sense. And you gotta remember something about Miktabek Oralbai. This guy is a caveman. He has been doing this for 10,000 years of knocking dudes fucking out cold. Tougher guys than Jack Hermansson. And he was really aggressive early on. Put a ton of pressure on. You could tell. I liked his game plan in this. He was like, I'm just gonna bomb the overhand and look for it the entire fight. Because I know if I clip this dude once, he's going fucking down. And Jack Hermansson was trying to keep Oralbai off by kind of peppering kicks, trying to keep him off that way. And then they go into the clinch. That's where you're like, oh shit, are we going to get a grappling exchange? Now they kind of let go of each other. That happened twice. There was a lot of feinting of level changes going on for Oralbai in this fight. Then he lands a nice right over the top, a nice uppercut, and then a right hand that kind of grazed kind of his temple ear area and just dropped him bad, and it's over. And I felt bad for Jack Hermansson because, just some dudes you don't really want to see get flatline KO'd like that. And it wasn't like the cleanest of right hands you'll ever see. Like Oralbai, he has power legitimately, but you could tell this might be more that Jack Hermansson's coming down a weight class, dehydrated, even though he looked good at weigh-ins, and just his chin is gone. It might be time. I think it's time for you to retire, Jack Hermansson. But Oralbai, electric, bro. You're a fucking fun fighter. Give him somebody ranked or some other big name. Miktabek Oralbai by 1st round knockout. I knocked that one right on the nose. Down the card, we go to 2 of my favorites, Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus Shamil Gaziev. Listen, I picked Waldo by decision here because I was like, all right, even if he's at his best, he's still coming in 18 days notice. He had to lose weight. He had to make weight just to fight in this fight. And Shamil's tough. I know he hasn't particularly fought anybody that well, but I still think of him as one of the better heavyweight prospects, which isn't saying much. But once the fight starts, Shamil Gaziev, he's out here moving his head, putting a lot of pressure on, keeping Waldo Cortes on his back foot. And then Waldo Cortes fucking just drops him to the ground. Shamil Gaziev gets back up. Cortes is still stinging him with the jab, and then he drops him with a fucking right. Don't let Waldo Cortes-Acosta have his back to the cage on his back foot swinging, because this guy will take you out every single time. And to take out Shamil Gaziev, who is a legit name in the division on short notice, 18 days notice nonetheless, is very impressive. 5 fights in 2025, looking for a sixth. He called out Curtis Blades. I don't really see that happening because Curtis Blades, I think, is still recovering from knee surgery, but everybody has to be a fan of this guy because for a while it was like, he's good, but he's kind of boring. Then you watch back what he did to Ante Deleuze and Shimil Gaziev, you're like, fuck it. I'm all on the Waldo Cortes-Acosta bandwagon right now, and all the spots are filled up. You cannot join the Waldo Cortes-Acosta bandwagon as not necessarily a founding member, but one of the first dudes who maybe really jumped on the hype train as it was building hype. Like, I wasn't there in the beginning. I shit on this guy a lot, but he's quickly become one of my favorite fighters due to his activity at heavyweight and his ability to put out dudes like nothing. And a bad look for Tom Aspinall. This dude recovers from a fucking eye poke in 2 weeks and knocks out a guy in Shimil Gaziev. So, really impressive win for Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Moving down the card, we go to the opener of the main card. The only pick I got wrong in the main card, Tagir Ulanbekov versus Kyoji Horiguchi. And credit to Horiguchi, he looked fucking amazing. You had people tweeting out, man, this guy could give a real problem to I had to laugh at that, to Pantoja. He was moving extremely well, chopping at the knees of Tagir Ulanbekov, just beating them up. Landed a nice takedown. There was a nice little scramble sequence where Ulanbekov then landed a takedown. But overall, Horiguchi just looked so much faster throughout this fight. He was landing overhands and oblique kicks. Then he survived the guillotine attempt. Had some great sub defense. Was beating up Tagir Ulanbekov's legs again. And, dropped Tagir Ulanbekov, I think, in the third round with a left hook. And Ulanbekov the whole time was just like, he looked slow. Like, the weight cut might have been done a toll on his body. Plus, you got a guy in Kyoji Horiguchi who's just beating the shit out of your leg. And then he dropped him again with a head kick, and then a rear naked choke gets in. A late round, third round, rear naked choke. A fucking amazing win for Kyoji Horiguchi in his return to the UFC. And who knows what's next for him. Obviously, this guy's going to have to fight other contenders before he gets a possible title shot against Pantoja. But either way, really exciting second stint in the UFC. I'm excited to see what else he has. Now, moving on to the prelims. The prelims were pretty hit or miss for me in terms of what I watched, because I had a haircut and some other things to do. But I did watch Bogdangrad versus Luke Riley. Bogdangrad did what I thought he was going to do. I was like, shit, maybe this was a nice pick for me. He was getting putting a lot of pressure on Luke Riley early, was putting a high pace on, got a single leg, was in half guard, got Luke Riley up against the fence at certain points, was just kind of smudging him against the fence, and was landing takedowns consistently. I was like, fuck, this is what's going to happen to Luke Riley. We knew his takedown defense wasn't particularly great, and he didn't have this world-class wrestling, but he does have pretty good stand-up game, and he chins Bogdangrad really bad at the beginning of the second round with a left and finished him. What a fucking comeback. Rough start to that first round in his debut, but what a fucking finish with that left hook. So shout out Luke Riley for an absolute masterclass of a second round against Bogdangrad. Moving down the card, we go to one of the most boring things I've ever seen. I only watched 2 rounds of it. I heard some people were saying, Sigid was robbed, but you shouldn't be in a position where you're going to that close decision against Nicholas Dalby. And these two dudes, from what I had watched, was just 2 old-ass men hugging on the fence, hugging on the ground. I don't know how Nicholas Dalby's 41 and you're not chinning him. And Sigid as a Gimiko might just suck. And Dalby was really putting on a pretty good pace and was being relentless at the end there. And he seemed to force the fight along the fence a lot more and had some nice dirty boxing moments against Sigid, who just looked shot midway through the second round. You're like, this guy's fucking done. And Dalby just wanted to win by split decision after every single kind of moment on the moment mentioned. Either way, down the card we go to Alex Perez versus Azu Almabayev. I heard that Alex Perez was probably up to nothing in this fight because I kind of missed it because I caught the beginning when I was having a haircut and then missed it. And I did say that there was late value for a sub for Azu Almabayev, but I figured that would be based off of dominations for decades or years. It was a pretty nasty decades or years. What the fuck did I just say? Did anybody hear that? I don't know what the fuck I just said. I just domination for a couple rounds. What did I just say? I know that he put him in a nasty guillotine. I heard like Perez was up to nothing. He was fighting perfect until he wasn't. I have to watch that back. I just literally blanked out right there. I have no clue what the fuck I was saying. Um, just nice win for Azu Amabayev. Good grappler. Alex Perez just kind of sucks because he's on this losing streak now where he's been dealing with injuries. He's been inactive, and then you kind of are up to nothing, and then blow it away at the end against the dangerous guy and Azu Almabayev. Moving on, I'm gonna watch that back to see what I actually said. Moving down the card, we go to Abdul Rahman Yakayev versus Rafael Cerqueira. We all knew Rafael Cerqueira was getting knocked out in about 2 seconds. Who does that to Rafael Cerqueira? Spinning hook kick, left, right, head kick drops him, ground and pound. Cerqueira gets up, then Yakayev slams on the ground, then gets fucking choked out bad. It was really an insane finish. There were a couple of really fucking wild finishes like early on this card, and this was one of them. Yakayev absolutely dominates a cannon in a Cerqueira who's gonna get cut. Down the card we go to Beksat Almakan versus Alexandre Topuria. This was a pretty fun match. Topuria was extremely tactical in this fight. Looked really sharp in my opinion, like a step up from the thickness fight, and he was getting touched up a little bit, but he's so calm and composed. I thought like he does a really nice job of applying forward pressure and cutting angles. Like he's kind of like a poor man's Ilya, but he's a tank for the bantamweight division. I was surprised Beksat kind of got away from hunting leg kicks because he was chopping Topuria down with those. And early on, I thought Beksat did a nice job pushing the pace, landing calf kicks. Then there was like a nice hip toss at the end of that first round that Topuria landed on him. Beksat did a nice job scrambling up. And really from the end of that first round on, I thought Topuria kind of landed more cleanly throughout the rest of the fight. He had a beautiful time double leg in the beginning of the second round. He was just missing the big right for most of this fight. Like if that was Ilya, he would have nuked Beksat. But just did a nice job mixing in the wrestling. Beksat I think knows coming in the third round he probably needs a finish, so he's coming out pressuring. Did a nice job stuffing the double leg on Alexandre Topuria, and then he escaped out of a single. Then he also escaped out of a single leg in that round. Overall, he did a really nice job, just kind of escaping. Or Alexandre Topuria did a really nice job mixing up the wrestling. I'm hearing voices around me, and then Beksat also had a nice time takedown in that round where he saw Topuria was loading up a right and got one, and I'll give him credit. I thought he did a nice job defending well on the fence, but I thought Topuria just kind of landed more cleanly throughout the fight, and then he won, I think, 30-27 on 2 scorecards and 29-28. My house was haunted. That's why I was looking around. That fucking scared me. Moving on down the card, big win for Topuria to Ryan Loder versus Ismail Nardiev. Ryan Loder got nuked in this fight, was trying to test out his striking, and just instantly died. He should have just used his wrestling. I don't have much to say. Nice win for Ismail Nardiev. And then these two fights, I really didn't watch that much. I saw Nurullo Aliyev. I think he just kind of smudged. Both these two didn't really land anything in the takedowns, but I think he kind of just smudged Shamrock. I think Shamrock had had a decent third round, but wasn't able to do a ton in mount. He has solid BJJ, but like he kind of kept it standing. But Aliyev just did a good job, with solid pressure and kind of just, I don't know, this wasn't a crazy fight. This is why you call him Baby Habib, because it's nothing really incredibly impressive from him, but he did his job, smudged out Shamrock. Tough debut for Shamrock. The boys go 1-1 on this card. And then I heard this was like Derek Lewis versus Francis Ngannou 1. Like nothing happened. Marek Bujilo, whatever the fuck his name is, absolutely sucked. Denzel Freeman, he didn't get a knockout like he said he would. So both these dudes should essentially be cut. I'm gonna look back to see what I was talking about with the decades thing, because that was one of the most insane things I've ever said. But overall, what a fight night. Listen, I think this fight night will be remembered highly, not just for this year, but just for the grand landscape of the UFC. Now we're gonna have Ian Garry fight Islam, Arman fight fucking Ilya. Who knows what's next for Dan Hooker, but I could see Bilal fighting like a Protez next. Like, there's still names to be had for these guys. No shame to Bilal. I think he still put up a pretty solid fight. And then Waldo Cortes-Acosta. What's next for this guy? Because he might be the biggest winner. He's going to get that 6th fight. I don't think it's going to be against Curtis Blades, but it's like, you know, is it a Pavlovich rematch, like, realistic? Like, I don't know. I'm just naming things. Again, I'm so tired. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Remember to like, comment, subscribe. We're going to come out maybe with a new video, like another new video this weekend or this week. Maybe a new creative video. I don't know. I got to get in the lab thinking of ideas. But again, I appreciate all of the support. Remember to, again, like, comment, subscribe, follow the TikTok, follow the Instagram. The doctor is signing off.
Ilya, stop running, Ilya. Stop running, Ilya. Good boy. I'll make it quick, no worries.